Thank you for watching. We'll be starting shortly. Hello and welcome to Distance Learning with Common Sense. My name is Jennifer Ehalt, and I'm a Senior Regional Manager at Common Sense Education. We want to welcome you here today to join us for mentoring students every day. And with us today, I want to introduce Michelle Thomas, who is the Director of Training and Program Development at the Mentoring Partnership of Southwest PA. Welcome, Michelle. How are you today?
Hi, Jennifer. I'm happy to be here. Happy National Mentoring Month.
Yes, happy National Mentoring Month. That just saying that out loud sounds good. So yeah, let's get right into the conversation. Tell us a little bit about your role at the Mentoring Partnership of Southwest PA.
Great. So as you stated, I'm the Director of Training and Program Development. And essentially what that means is, in short, is that I oversee the training and technical assistance opportunities that we have available for mentoring programs, schools, and organizations in the region. So a little bit about the Mentoring Partnership. We've been in existence for 26 years now. So we're just coming off our 25th anniversary.
Wow, that's incredible. That is
So
incredible.
exciting. We'll never forget because it was the year the pandemic hit. So it made it it made it one to remember, that's for sure. But the work that we do in the region, we are the Mentoring Partnership of Southwestern Pennsylvania. So the work we do provide services to organizations, schools in our region, but we are an affiliate of the National Mentoring Partnership Mentor, which means I have colleagues in 23 other states across the United States and in Canada. So the work that happens in our region is happening everywhere. And in short, we're just promoting the quality and quantity of mentoring opportunities for young people.
That's amazing. Gosh, you sound connected. It sounds like you can get perspectives from everybody, which is always, a good thing when you're running an important program like a mentoring program.
Agreed.
So, when we started to think about this and talk about the topic, the one thing that kind of threw me off is when I think about mentoring and mentoring every day, the word mentor and sign up, it feels like a really big commitment. Not a bad commitment, just a really big commitment, time commitment. You're signing up to be part of this child's life, once a week, twice a week, however you set it up. Can we clarify a little bit about how easy everyday mentoring can be and what it looks like?
Oh, Jennifer, I love that you asked that question because I think mentoring in and of itself can sound so loaded. Like, what does that entail? Like, what does that mean? Or how much is that going to cost me to be a mentor? But we're talking specifically about everyday mentoring today, and the fact of doing mentoring students every day. It is so simple. You have to be intentional, but it's simple. And I want to share a story because I think it'll better highlight the conversation today. At the start of the pandemic, as you can imagine, for all of us, it was just such a hectic time. And for my kids specifically, it was challenging because it was so abruptly, not mine, everyone's kids, but it happened so abruptly that it was really hard for the kids to transition from seeing their friends and teachers every day to being online, really with not much connection, because folks were trying to figure it out. Like, no one was prepared for this to happen. So that happened in March, and the one activity that my kids were still able to do because it was outdoors was softball. And I had they must have talked about it in the chat feature at school, and I had a teacher reach out to me, and she said, you know what, I want to come check out the girls softball games. And I was like, we'd love to have you. She said, send the schedule, and when I can make it, I'll make it. So I have two girls. They play on two different teams, and it's travel ball, so they could be anywhere on any given day. Do you know this teacher showed up at 8 o'clock in the morning? Now, mind you, March, it's still very cold outside. She showed up at 8 a.m. She got to the game before I did. She had her gloves and hot chocolate. She came to watch my daughter play softball. And then on top of that, the youngest one had a game. It was literally over an hour away in the afternoon. Tell me she did not turn around and come there. And that, that embodies everyday mentoring. Doesn't mean you have to drive around or get up at 7 a.m. to go to the softball game, but at such a critical time in their lives, I had a teacher reach out who they were missing, that showed up to say, hey, I want to be here for you. And that's what everyday mentoring is. It's those intentional interactions from caring adults to young people to help ensure that they're connected, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel valued.
And that's as simple as just being present, right?
That's what it
You didn't
is.
have to say or do anything. It was a matter of being present. And in a student or child's life, the teacher role plays a significant, it has a significant place. And gosh, to look into the stands or the bleachers and see, your teacher, that's huge. That's amazing. And I'm sure that's one of many, many stories that we could capture across classrooms. So we know it's happening every day, whether we're recognizing it or not, right? That was one example. How else are we seeing this happen in classrooms?
There's many ways, and you'll find, like in my conversation and working with schools and organizations, that honestly, organization to organization, school to school, classroom to classroom, that looks different because we're individuals, right? And how we connect with, you mentioned being present, right? That's a tenet of everyday mentoring, just being present. Some other tenets are just recognizing every child and empowering young people to ask for help. So what that looks like from classroom to classroom really can vary. This was about last year. I don't know if you saw Good Morning America did a feature story on an educator and how they greet young people during the day as they're coming in the building. And what it is the educator had listed on a poster board, like, how do you want to be greeted, with a high five? Do you want to do a little dance, right? And there were all these options. So that is really an example of how that's playing out in school, because it seems so simple, but those intentional interactions make a lasting impact in the life of a young person. So if I'm a young person who feels like I need that touch and a hug, wow, that's a big deal to come into school that day and be able to pick, I want a hug. But if I'm a young person that says, no, like, I don't want to touch, like, touch is uncomfortable to me, and I want to do an elbow or a fist bump, right? Then at that moment, I feel recognized, seen, and heard. So in classrooms, it looks like varied teaching strategies. Like, teachers are doing this day in and day out, and I don't think that they get enough credit for the work they're doing, because there's so much that has to happen in the school on a day-to-day basis that some of these seemingly small things don't get recognized. It could be as simple as sticking behind, and having lunch with a student, right? It could be providing that additional support that a student needs, or calling home to mom, dad, grandma and say, so-and-so did a great job today. That's what it looks like when it plays out into the classroom.
And I agree. And I also think I find myself too sometimes just using like affirmations, or just the words you choose to constantly say and make it habitual. And so things like, intentionally saying, good job. I noticed you worked really hard on that. You should be very proud of that, because sometimes they're just not hearing that in enough places. So I do feel like spaces like classrooms, out of school places, can have those safe spaces where they know they're appreciated and loved, et cetera, et cetera. And so while, gosh, all this talk about classrooms and high fives, in a time like this where we're hybrid, some of us are still in hybrid mode, some of us are still full remote mode. So how are you seeing this everyday mentoring happening virtually?
Virtually, and honestly, it looks very similar. I think that was the biggest concern that schools had, that organizations had, is like, how do we take what we know works in person and make that happen online when we're separated by screens and all kind of tech issues, right? I don't know how many times I lost Wi-Fi since being at home. So how do we make that happen? And it goes back to those tenets of everyday mentoring is being intentional, being present, being creative, and making sure young people are connected. So sometimes it looks like, how do we make sure young people are supported beyond instruction? Like, do they have the necessary tools at home, right? It's making those phone calls, and it's taking that extra time. I had mentioned about like sticking behind and having lunch. In the virtual platform, I had a colleague share how they were working with their niece and nephew. They had happened to be at their house that day while they were in school, and as they were breaking for lunch, one of the kids, she could overhear it on the computer. One of the kids said, "Oh, I didn't want to eat by myself today," and the teacher said, "Well, I'll stick around. We don't have to log off. Like, I'll go grab my lunch and come back." And then she heard two other kids say, "Oh, I want to say too," right? So it again, it seems small, but that's what it can look like in a virtual space. Another way is, this is high stress time. Kahoot's a big, like, playing these fun games and engaging young people to generate some things that would have happened in person, but to make those connections happen online. So those are just a
Yeah.
few.
Oh, I love it. And I think a lot of educators, mentors, just anyone caring for students and children right now have stepped up their game in learning technology and different apps and games and websites that can be engaging and, fun while learning. They don't even realize sometimes that they're learning, but it's just really nice to have those options, especially in virtual spaces. And, we all are craving, friendships and people and interactions, person to person. And that social and emotional well-being for our students has to be a top priority. And so I love how you mentioned just hang and have lunch with me. I mean, remember back when you were like the star student of the week and you had lunch with the principal, or, someone really special in the school, and that can still happen. And I love that. And I also saw an example the other day. Someone used Jamboard. It's a Google, it's a feature of Google. And it's like they were putting in the picture of a student, like the star student. And so the background of the Jamboard was the student, and just, making them feel special for a day.
Exactly.
And like highlighting qualities. So, whatever it may be, through technology or just words, it can be that simple. So I really love all these ideas that you're sharing.
Thanks.
One other thing that came up, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, one thing you had mentioned just in relation to technology that I think is important to highlight as it relates to everyday mentoring is youth voice, right? And given this technology, a lot of the young people are very tech savvy and had already been the tools that we're just starting to use now to keep that connection going. So it's, how do we provide youth voice and asking them, hey, what'll work? If they feel like they have some input, then they're more invested. So really looking to them to share that power. Like, how can we make, disseminating this information exciting today? Or can you take the lead in sharing, right, X, Y, and Z? So it's really including them in the process and allowing their voice to be heard is also, what we would consider as everyday mentoring. They definitely have skills that can lend well to some of us older adults.
We did one of our sessions last month, I believe, was students as tech leaders, and it's a whole program that was flushed out in a school district. And it was just amazing to see the skill sets of these students. And, mentoring they're learning all kinds of things that they could take with them, no matter what it is. And I think that kind of goes to what we were talking about, finding the spark.
Yes.
I would love for you to speak around, finding a spark that can ignite, the excitement, engagement with a student or a child.
So when we deliver everyday mentoring trainings in the community, so we talk about, right, how simple it is and that it's probably happening every day, but we do have resources to really help adults put those tools in their toolbox so they are more mindful of being intentional throughout the day. So one of the things that we cover in the training is the importance of identifying a young person's spark. And really what that is we all know as adults, right? There's certain things that really spark our interest that make us motivated or eager to learn more or eager to connect. So it's finding out what that is for every student. And that takes intentional effort, that takes work, especially when a student spark is not your inherent spark, right? So like, well, what do I do if their spark has something related to technology and I don't feel as comfortable with it? But it's one, positioning yourself to be able to recognize. So that's beyond, hello, hey, we're glad you're here, right? That's really getting to know the student for who they are and what makes them tick, if you will, right? And if you don't possess that spark that they have, how do you expand possibilities for them and connect them to other educators, other community members that might embody that spark to connect them with, right? So it's being able to, again, those varied learning strategies and being, I always say, increasing those noticing skills so that you can notice those sparks so that you can help make content, and especially in educating spaces, like where you're teaching a lesson, something that resonates better. So if a young person's spark is money and you're teaching math, it's easier for them to see, right, the dollars out, and they're motivated by the money, right? Or if it's sports, right? How do you bring in sports to help, highlight certain concepts that you might be wanting to cover? And it's hard to understand those sparks if you're not increasing those noticing skills to recognize really what makes a person tick.
And after listening to you answer that, it makes me feel good, because I would get nervous if I was connected or part of, some of the students in the class or the group that I'm working with, finding something that connects you, so we all have different hobbies, we all have different interests, and I would be, I guess I'm appreciative of how connected we are with resources, whether it's people, videos on how to, watching something together to learn about it. And so we really have, the world at our fingertips. And I think that's a positive thing, to be able to find this stuff, because when I was little, I wasn't as connected. You only knew what you knew around you. Where now we have mentors in our life and folks in our life that can, oh, this is what you like. Did you know about this? And it could be states away. It could be a world away, but at least you can connect the students. And I just think they have much more opportunity now on both ends. I think mentoring is just as fun now, because you can, guide them in ways we couldn't think about before. So I love that. Gosh, now all I can think about is spark, and what sparks interest and, fun and, all of that good stuff.
And
so
that's the beauty of the time we're in now, because you mentioned, like, in thinking about those sparks right now that we're all virtual, we have access to even more opportunities. I had a school tell me that, and they were bringing in a virtual field trip, and they were bringing in a chef from Paris. Like, how cool is that? If it wasn't for the pandemic and for this virtual interactions, that likely wouldn't have happened. So talking about expanding possibilities for young people, that not only do they get to see a chef from a different country, that might excite them about being able to, like, oh, that might be a place I want to visit someday, right? And those sparks, to me, I think, I think about a fire, right? We think about a spark and then it grows. Sometimes those sparks lead to other sparks. And then
for sure.
Exactly.
Yes. And also the idea of co-viewing, co-watching, they're not just consuming all of the information. If there's a mentor involved, you can have a conversation around what they're seeing. How does that make them feel?
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to take this offline? And how can we work with you to make this happen? So just so many easy ways to really expose our students to all of the opportunities out there. So gosh, we've talked a lot. Let's see, there might be some questions coming in from our audience. Let's see what we got here. Let's see, what about older students used as mentors? Oh gosh, I love that. I love that. Is that being utilized enough? Kids often have different connections to older kids or teens than with teachers. Very good point. I'll let you kind of think about that. And
I also love that that was brought up because, you know, I could talk about mentoring all day, right? And that we're focusing specifically around, right, this everyday mentoring, but older students as mentors, I focus a lot of support and work around helping students become peer mentors, right? What resources do they need? There's nothing like a peer to model behavior, you know, or they're cool, right? You want to be like like your older sibling when you grow up, or the college student, or whatever the case may be, based on like best mentoring best practices. When we're working with schools and organizations that are developing mentoring programs, ideally they would be 2 steps removed. So maybe 2 grade levels. So a 9th grader mentoring a 7th grader. And that's for a number of reasons, but for the biggest one being that they're also students and that you want to make sure in a peer mentoring relationship that that peer mentor is supported as well. So you just want to make sure they're old enough to be removed from that younger person situation. But honestly, that is an ideal, peer mentoring is an ideal intervention technique, if you will, as far as support goes. And it provides great leadership opportunity for that peer mentor. Funny story, was invited to a fundraising event from one of our peer mentoring programs out of a school, and it was an adult prom, but the peer mentors were the hosts for the day. And I got a chance to chat with one of the students. He was actually a senior, and he mentioned how excited he was to be a peer mentor because, one, he was chosen to be a peer mentor, and 2, it let him feel like he had an opportunity to share information with other people. He said he was the youngest of 5 siblings, and here was an opportunity for him to make a difference in the life of someone else. So mentoring is a 2-way street. So in a peer mentoring relationship, not only does it impact the mentee, it definitely has positive impacts on the mentor.
oh gosh, talk about all this impact. I'm really inspired. I'm like thinking to myself, am I mentoring enough? Am I like helping out enough? Because like we mentioned back before, the word mentor can just feel so much. But honestly, it's just being there for someone.
It is.
No matter what
intentional.
age, you know? And so we have another question coming in. I love this question. Thank you to whoever's bringing this up because it's so relevant. You know, how should we think about mentoring or supporting our peers as well? You know, educators are feeling very similar challenges. The loneliness, you know, am I doing everything I should be doing? Is it right? Is it enough? You know, can you offer any tips or advice on just, you know, peer to peer?
Yeah, as adults, right? You think about like what would I need to help me feel supportive or supported, and then how do I extend that support to my colleagues and friends? So and again, it could be so small, but it's the fact that just sending a note, hey, I'm thinking of you, or I use this resource today in class and it went really well. It's like that sharing of information. I think being mindful to carve out time to do that, you know. So in thinking about everyday mentoring and adults as mentors every day, one of the things that I think is important to really, if I could leave people with that addresses that question, is our own self-care, right? When we pour out day to day, then we'd have to be mindful of our own self-care. So being intentional to have those relationships with colleagues in moments of stress, and just being the simple to say, I see you, I hear you, to our colleagues, are very important. One of the things that we did as a staff to stay connected in high stress times is we carved out time to do some fun things together virtually. And if it was sending, we were send a picture of the day. Like, what's the picture of the day? And I remember having things going on at home, which required me to like move all my things into one room. And I took a picture like, this is what my day is. It was so stressful, but then someone sent one back of them and their dog or them and their grandchild. And that seems so small, but those are the things that allow us to remember, like, we are human. Pinch yourself. We are human. How do we model that support for each other as well as for the young people in our lives?
Oh gosh, what an inspiration you are today. I am really inspired by just, I guess it's taking the little things, the term, to a whole new level. Yeah, I mean, snail mail might be making a comeback because, people are just looking forward to that mail again, and, not on the screen. And, you're right. So, little things here and there can really make a difference. You're absolutely right. So we covered a lot in 15 minutes. I've already known my takeaways and kind of what resonated with me, but what do you want our audience to leave with today? What are the takeaways that you hope are instilled?
So one of the big ones is really what you just said, Jennifer, is those seemingly small things really do add up. Research shows that young people who are provided a supportive, caring adult relationship are 55% more likely to enroll in post-secondary education. We talked about peer mentoring, right? And they're more likely to then volunteer and become a mentor. They're less likely to use drugs, more likely to attend school, right, and not skip a class. So there are so those small things really do add up. And that's one thing I want to take away is never slight yourself from feeling like, we look at big picture like, oh, it was such a bad day. But you never know by just saying, hey, Michelle, hey, Jennifer, I love your necklace, right? How that could have really made a big impact because you've seen me beyond, you recognize my necklace, you've seen me beyond Michelle or beyond Jennifer. And those really do add up, and statistics show that makes a big difference. So that's one of the big takeaways is never knock the small things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis to make an impact in the life of a young person. The other thing I want to take away is, would love people to take away that we make this seem very simple, and it is, but you have to be intentional. You have to be intentional to provide those opportunities to allow young people to talk and listen to them, like truly listen to them without interruptions. Not only listening to the things they say, but listening to the things they're not saying. And in a lot of cases, that's more important because young people don't have the words that we have to articulate when they're struggling with things. So we really have to be mindful and not be so quick as adults to have a response or to go into problem solving. It's just taking the time to listen. So those are two big takeaways that I would say. Never knock the small things, and then be intentional and show up every day. Every day is a clean slate, we say, when working with kiddos. So keep it in mind that every day is a clean slate, and we're gonna start all over to see where we can make a mentoring difference.
Fantastic. Couldn't have said it better myself. You can tell that you're the expert, and we really appreciate you joining us today and sharing all of these tips and experiences and ideas around how we can really, really be there for our young people in light of National Mentoring Month and celebrating. I know we have shared a bunch of links on how we can celebrate what you can do, but the biggest thing we're going to ask everybody, right, is to thank your mentor. Take time in the next week or two and thank a mentor that you had, that inspired you, that you wouldn't maybe be where you are today. Maybe it could be that big, or just something that happened last week that you just, you were inspired by that person and what they did or said to you or how they treated you. So hashtag thank your mentor. I know it's a really nice way to just let people know that you care. So I think that's an easy lift. Everybody can do that. Hashtag thank your mentor. Michelle, again, thank you so much for joining us today. You can find this session and all other sessions on our YouTube channel. It is recorded along with all of our information and resources as well. So we encourage you to share this out with friends and colleagues, double check your resources again, and find yourself mentoring every day, right?
Yes, thank you so much, Jennifer. And thank you all of those adults who are working with young people now, because it's such a stressful time. And I honestly wouldn't be able to do it without my village. So thank you not only to you, Jennifer, but all those who are serving in youth development capacities during this time. So greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Michelle. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you on February 5th for our next one.